Your monthly subscription box from Postflybox.com includes all the materials needed to tie a dozen flies, along with some extra goodies. The Power Perch is a fabulous baitfish pattern, absolutely packed with movement and color. The combination makes it all but irresistible to bass and pike. Begin by getting one of the size 8 heavy-duty hooks firmly secured in the jaws of your tying vise. Then, load a bobbin with a spool of white uni-thread. Get the thread started on the hook shank, leaving a little bit of space behind the eye, and take a half dozen or so wraps rearward before snipping off the excess tag. Select a single yellow marabou feather and strip off the fibers from the lower third of both sides of the stem. Lightly wet the remaining fibers to make them more manageable, and while holding them in your right hand, measure to form a tail about 2 hooks in length. Keep that measurement, then use rearward wraps of tying thread to anchor the marabou to the top of the hook shank all the way back to the start of the bend. You can then lift the butt end of the feather up and snip it off close. Tan polar chenille is used for the body of the fly. Snip a 5-inch length free from the hank. Secure one end of the chenille to the hook shank at the base of the tail and advance your tying thread forward to about 1/4 of the way down the shank. While preening the fibers back, start taking touching wraps with the chenille up the hook shank. When you reach your tying thread, use it to anchor the chenille and snip the excess off close. Take a few more thread wraps to clean up the tie-in area. Pull a fairly sizable clump of tan SST dubbing free from the packet. Fold the dubbing in half a couple of times, then tease out one end. Place the other end above your tying thread and using the back edge of the hook as a guide, snip that end off. Lightly secure the dubbing with wraps of tying thread, then push the material to the underside of the hook. Continue taking thread wraps to further secure the dubbing. Pull down, then trim off the material, then lightly taper the ends. You want it to look something like this. Now, get hold of one of the brown marabou feathers and prep it in the same manner as you did the yellow. Lay it on top of the hook shank so its tips are even with the other marabou tips, then secure it with tight wraps of tying thread. Once the marabou is bound down well, snip the excess butt end of the feather off close. Continue taking thread wraps to make sure nothing can pull free. Next, pull a fairly large clump of the green SST dubbing free from the packet. Fold the clump in half, then snip the formed loop. Roll the dubbing in your fingers to stagger the snipped ends, then find the midpoint of the clump. Place that midpoint above your tying thread and take a couple of wraps to anchor it. Pull the forward-pointing portion back and take thread wraps over the fold to hold the dubbing back, like so. Do a few more thread wraps to clean up the tie-in area, then preen out the green dubbing. Trim the dubbing into a good-looking perch-like profile. Reach for your whip finish tool and use it to do a back-to-front 4 to 5 turn whip finish, seat the knot well, and snip your tying thread free. Squeeze out a small drop of UV Cure resin onto a scrap piece of paper and use your bodkin to pick up a drop or two. Carefully place the resin on the thread wraps on the near side of the hook. Pull one of the 3D eyes from the sheet and place it on the resin drop. Then use your UV torch to set the resin. Pick up another drop and repeat the procedure on the far side of the hook. Ideally, you want the eyes to be mirror images of each other. Give the resin a healthy shot of UV light to cure it. Using more resin, fill in the spaces between the eyes, both top and bottom, and cure thoroughly with UV light. This is best done in a couple of thin layers of resin as opposed to a single thick one. Tease out the dubbing, both top and bottom, with a dubbing needle. Then remove the fly from your tying vise. Although not essential, I found a small chip clip works well for adding perch-like stripes to the back of the fly. Just use a black permanent marker on both sides. The clip acts as a guide and helps with consistency side to side. Trade in the black marker for a red one. This time, use the clip to aid in creating a single red gill-like marking on the tan dubbing. And that's the Power Perch. When wet, the marabou adds a ton of motion to the back end of the fly, while the front end looks extremely realistic.